I came up with 7 styles of yoga class sequencing that I want to share briefly with you today. Most of the people in my extended audience have found me through yoga sequencing strategies for new yoga teachers. It's what I teach, it's what I love sharing, and it's what I love helping new yoga teachers with so that you can gain the confidence to get out and actually teach. My name's Ashley, and that's exactly what I do. And I did just create a membership, sort of an inner circle, a yoga sequencing and cueing membership, a community of people who are like-minded and wanting to dive deeper with the concepts and the strategies that I teach around sequencing and cueing. You can check out more of that at ashesyoga.com/membership. But let's get into those 7 sequencing styles and just a brief overview of each of these. Now, I have talked about some of these styles in separate videos, but I'm doing a full overview here right now. The first yoga sequencing style is called the block flow. Block flow. That's a phrase that I made up and terms for this style. And you can think of little building blocks, or even note cards. Just think of sections. Kind of sections, but they all connect together. So blocks that build on each other. So the first block would be, maybe it's breath. The second block would be your warm-ups. The third block would be sun salutations. The fourth block would be, maybe it's a 5-pose standing series. Fifth block would be some core work. 6th block, maybe it's more standing poses. 7th block, and you go down and down. So each of the blocks are between 5 and 8 minutes. So warm up, sun salutations, standing series, another standing series, core work, seated series. So it's all series, and with these blocks you could take one out and put a different section in. So it's sort of like plugging and placing. So if you had a note card and you wanted to write some 5-pose series down or 3 poses, you could easily take one out and put that one in that same section of the block series. And there's actually another style called sectional sequencing, so don't get that confused. This is block sequencing. Block sequencing, okay? This is my favorite. This is what I learned. It's really a step-by-step process. It goes along with my 10 steps to sequence a yoga class, guide, and video. So block sequencing. The second style I have listed is ladder flow. I do have a separate video talking about ladder flow, but the basic concept is you would do your warm-up and your cool-down, which are pretty much going to be the same. Even for every sequencing style, warm-up and cool-down can stay pretty much the same. It's that middle section of class, if you're looking at it like a bell curve, that you want to change. And a ladder series goes from one pose, and you do it again, and you add on another pose. You do the whole series again, add on another pose. The series again, so you're building up, 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 up. So you hold one pose, do the first pose, hold the second pose, do the first, second, hold the third pose, do the first, second, third, hold the fourth pose, and on and on. And you can also do a ladder series with increasing or decreasing amount of breath. I do this in some of my sun salutations, where we go through 5 sun salutations, the first with each pose holding 1 breath, then each pose holding 2 breaths, each pose holding 3 breaths, 4 breaths, and then 5 breaths in each pose. And you can imagine doing a low plank chaturanga for 5 breaths. It becomes quite challenging, but it's a fun challenge to incorporate into some of my classes. So that's a ladder flow. You can go up the ladder and then repeat the cycle a few times, like the whole series, or you can go back down the ladder, so maybe you take it back. I don't recommend more than 5 or 6 poses for this. That's typically enough for a 45-minute to hour-long class, and also just enough for that middle section to build plenty of heat. The third style I call a wave flow. Think of waves. Whee. Now you'll still have that sort of bell-shaped curve of the whole yoga practice, but with a wave flow, you're doing a series of poses. Let's say you did your warm-up. You do a series of poses, maybe 4 to 5 poses, at a sort of intro lower level, and then you go through those series of poses again adding some intensifications or variations, or maybe it's completely adding one more pose to the series. And then you might go and flow through that wave again even more, so even different variations, not variations in every single pose, just some intensifications and options in some of the poses. So you go through the wave of poses, you've got a base, and you change it up each time just slightly to make it either harder or just a slightly different sensation. So you'll go through 3 or 4 waves typically, depending how long you hold each pose for a typical class. 4 waves is probably pretty good. If you do get to a 5th one, you want to start to come down and use that one as more of a cool down. Remember that bell-shaped curve. If you get to a 5th wave, you're usually on the back end of class where you want to come down and start cooling down. The 4th style of yoga sequencing is what I call sectional flow. Not to be confused with the block flow. In the block flow, everything connected to each other and it had a place for itself. They build on each other. A sectional flow is a class that is sectioned into pieces that could stand on their own. That's the important part. They could stand on their own. You're combining different sections together to create a longer class. My best example for this is my morning movement and meditation practice that I do every day at 6 a.m. There's a little shout out there. I do have a free morning movement and meditation practice, a 30-minute practice every day at 6 a.m. Pacific time. If you are interested in joining one of those, it's at ashesyogastudio.com. You'll find the link to join. This is a sectional flow. I have 3 sections in a 30-minute practice. Number 1 is head to toe movement. We start with breath, head rotation, shoulders, waist twist, and legs to get a full body movement stretch. The second section could stand on its own too. It's sun salutations and some simple standing poses. So it's a very short 10-minute, either a couple sun salutations, a few standing poses, and that's it. You could just do that. And the third section is a seated meditation. And seated meditation is its own practice. So if someone came in 20 minutes into class, they could still get the meditation and find benefit. If someone wanted to do sections 1 and 3 only and skip the sun salutations, they could do that. There's no huge buildup at all. In fact, it's really more of there's like a little buildup in each section. So you can think of it as little humps, right? So we've got the head to toe warm up done, we've got sun salutations done, and we've got a meditation. Another example of this might be a yin and yang class or a yin-yasa, or whatever you want to call it, where you have half vinyasa practice, usually to begin with to build heat, and then half the class is a yin class where you're down on the ground doing longer stretches and holding the shapes longer. So that would be another form of a sectional sequence, a 2-part sequence, a vinyasa class and a yin class. This is also applicable if you do a yoga HIIT class, let's say. So you have part of the class is HIIT and part of it is yoga. So it's very different styles or different things in obvious sections of the class. Make sense? Okay, so if you want to take a morning movement class, you can at ashesyogastudio.com. It's a sectional sequence, and I very much enjoy it. I keep the format pretty much the same every single day, except I add a different intention and just a few different poses and maybe a few sprinkles of creativity here and there. The 5th style of yoga sequencing is a very creative one. It's called a circular flow. You might know this as a mandala flow. And this is a flow that takes you in a 360-degree circle around your mat. So you might be facing the front of the room, and then you turn to the side and do, let's say, goddess pose, and then you pivot to the back of the room and continue and do full circle. And you want to do the full circle back, and you'll do it a few times. Now, I'm not going to get too into the specifics on how you would do this. Just know that it is a very circular, around the mat experience, and it's best led in person in a studio. It's very challenging to do a full circular flow on Zoom or online because there is a lot of turning and pivoting, and mirroring is sometimes an issue, and it's difficult to cue unless you're very audiologically inclined, where you're just listening to the teacher's cues. But it's also hard for a yoga teacher if someone is a more visual learner, and this is challenging for beginners. This is a great flow for those yoga practitioners who are looking to challenge themselves a little bit more, but not necessarily physically, but more mentally, where you have to figure out which direction you're going, and it's actually really fun. So that's a circular flow. That would be more, again, in the middle of the practice. You do a warm-up, cool down can stay pretty much the same, and then in the middle you would do those circle mandala flows. The sixth style of yoga sequencing is a robot flow. I call it robot flow because it's very just robotic. You do right side and then you do left side. Right side and then left side. New pose, other side. So there's nothing super creative about it. And this is actually a great thing for beginners. It's a great thing if you're teaching restorative practices or yin practice where you just have a few poses. There's nothing that you really have to get too creative with. And the reason it's great for beginners is that it's already a new enough experience where adding a bunch of creative transitions and flow, it gets to be really mind-boggling. So having a simple right side then left side, or a linear, very linear flow is more beneficial for those just starting out. And in time, you can then have it become more creative. And the last yoga sequencing style I have to share with you is a set sequence. Very simple. This is either a traditional set sequence or a set sequence or something that you learned, let's say from Yoga Journal magazine. They oftentimes have sequences for you to do. So it's memorizing a sequence and doing it as is. Other examples of this would be Ashtanga primary series and second series, and the other series. It would be Budokan primary series if you're a Budokan yogi like me. Or it would be the Bikram hot yoga series, those 26 poses. And there's a few others out there as well where there is a set series that you learn, and if you want, you can be maybe a little creative with the flow, but for the most part, it really sticks to the series that is set. And those were my 7 sequencing styles. I actually talk more about these in depth and how to do them in my online workshop called Focused Flow. You can learn more about that at focusedflowyoga.com. And again, these styles were block flow, ladder flow, wave flow, sectional flow, circular flow, robot flow, and set sequence. If you want to dive even deeper and join my inner circle of new yoga teachers gaining the confidence in sequencing and cueing, check out my membership at ashesyoga.com/membership, and I can't wait to see you on the inside. Stay tuned on this YouTube channel for more yoga sequencing, yoga cueing, and technology and business tips, strategies, and techniques. I'll see you next time in another video.